Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time of day it is, I hope it's good to be where you are. Because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and today we're going mudletting with Mysteries of the Realm. Yeah. Okay. All right, and so if you're not familiar with Mysteries of the Realm, do yourself a favor and head on over to his channel and check out some of his work and subscribe if you dig it as much as I do. He's an admirer of Mud City, and it shows because he definitely understands how to have fun with the lies, right? And he has good intuition and insight, so definitely check him out. All right, I like his work enough that I sought him out to do this episode of Mudletting, and we had a great time, and it's my pleasure to share it with you. So I know the quality on these isn't the greatest, but I really enjoy the late night 3:30 in the morning underground AM radio talk show vibe they give off, you know? And so before I cut you loose on this one, I need to make a correction. Early on I mentioned Miss Havisham and her work, but she's changed her channel name, so I'll leave a link to hers and to Mystery's channel in the description box. So without further ado, let's go mudletting with Mysteries of the Realm. And remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies. All right, so have fun, guys.
How much more can be said about the mud flood now? I mean, I'm not saying we should stop by any means.
I don't know how much more there is to say about the mud flood either, because there is a lot out there, and the people who are making those videos do an excellent job of them. But you know, the thing about that is you know, I mean, I don't think anybody's right, you know. So there's still I think plenty to be looked at, and the more I kind of look at it through, at least through Baltimore City and like the American cities, and you know, the problem is I so badly want to, you know, dismiss all like the sort of timeline thing, right? Because it's something that's told to me, you know, it's part of the paradigm that's presented to us, right? And I want to try not to, you know, rely on that so much as a crux, but you know, you have to, because it's the skeleton, it's the building block of what they've told us, this timeline, you know. But I don't think, you know, like in Baltimore, it's interesting because they do have this large history of repeated flooding that doesn't really get talked about in the historical narrative. You have to dig for it.
I'm looking through a lot of this stuff. It seems like a lot of places have had, like you're saying, continuing.
Yeah. So it's not like, you know, how mud flood was kind of originally presented, you know, 3 or 4 years ago when those videos first started coming out, as like sort of one catastrophe. You know, to me, there certainly seems to be evidence of, you know, more recent, smaller ones that could have been responsible for a lot of that. But I also believe that there's a lot of intentional regrading, like they deliberately buried things, you know, and they created a new level. It was done deliberately, you know, and not some accident or flooding or, you know, catastrophe, but by a plan, you know.
I do too. Look, I think most things are deliberate.
Depending how much credence you want to put in like the simulation world, I mean, we're all part of a program, you know, and that's the way I kind of look at it, and that's why I when I can remember to look at the dates and stuff, I have fun, you know, because who knows what code it's written in, you know, what, you know, is the code 3s, is the code 6s, is it 9s, is it 1s, you know, what's the code?
Yeah, you love the numbers.
Yeah, with the numbers, because it's in there, you know, and we're all coded, you know, and the language is coded.
Yeah. Well, that's what my last video was about. I was trying to, I hope I made my point that we get an ego and stuff like that because we think we're smart.
Oh, yeah.
We're only smart from what came from them.
Right. I'm dumb as shit. I do not.
People always, you know, give me this attitude like, oh, how can you know, I know this and I know that, and it's like, oh, my sports team is great, and stuff, and it's like, first of all, it's not your sports team.
Right.
What did they ever do for you? Did they ever pay your mortgage? No. But the other thing is too, it's all kind of from that wave of wherever we came from.
Right.
You know, and that's the scary thing, because you think you're smart, but all you're doing is repeating something that doesn't actually exist sometimes, right?
Yeah, we can only work with what we're given. You know, we're given all of this, you know, and then they kind of have been doing their best to, you know, keep it networked, I guess is the right way.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to bring up is the brewery has more metal on the top of that building than I've ever seen.
Oh God, I haven't taken a look at that building in a while now. I haven't. But yeah, there's just my mental.
Glass,
Yeah, just
whatever it is, it's completely adorned with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You should go back to that one too.
Yeah, back where it all began.
Comes from the old ones because back in the day, 2 years ago, when I used to watch you, I had all these questions and I wrote them down because I was like, I want, because I used to comment on your stuff all the time, but those channels are long gone. And because I didn't want to be associated with certain things,
right?
And I started realizing, geez, I don't even know what channel I'm commenting with on here, so I gotta stop doing that. And then I got this mystery scanner idea, so I was like, yeah, that'll work. Oh, was it you who was mentioning the Lewis and Clark expedition?
I'm sure I brought it up somewhere, but I haven't focused on that at all.
Yeah, because I was just gonna ask you about because if it was you mentioned there was so much in there that wasn't taught in school, and I was like, gee, I'd like to hear a little of that if you knew.
I know. I mean, what I probably did talk about this because I used to have a book, on the Lewis and Clark expedition that was all the things that were kind of left out of their official report. That was logged in the Smithsonian or whatever, whoever whatever government agency they had to report to in 1814 or whatever year that was.
Whoever they were.
And there's a lot of interesting stories in there about them meeting tall blonde-haired giants, like in the Dakotas, and
really,
yeah, oh yeah.
Wow.
So they definitely ran into stuff like that. But I left that book with a friend of mine in Connecticut. And so I have to get it back, maybe someday, but or just look for it. It's probably still in print somewhere. It wasn't like it was, it was Bear and Company or something. One of those weird new agey presses,
The only thing is, if I get that book, I'll start making videos. I'll start making videos about that, and I have enough stuff. Man, I got 5 videos. I have videos that I've made that I'm really. I have a reservation about putting up because they're like stuff that I'm not sure I wanna. If I because if I ever sort of get found out, I don't want that stuff would be really because it's like I guess I'll say it's like the whole creature tranny celebrity people that control us. I want to be very careful with that because. At my job before, this guy used to joke. I'll tell you, I'm really not supposed to say this because I signed all kinds of stuff, but we used to do the craziest catalogs for doctors, how they can turn men into women and women into men.
Right.
And this is one of the things that people don't understand how deep this stuff goes. We used to do these catalogs, and man, every time we did them, we had to sign our life away, and we had to cordon off the whole printing press that we were doing it on, and the bindery would go into lockdown, blackout, and stuff. This stuff was it doesn't seem like it would be a secret like that, but for the people that we were actually doing it for, it was. It's sort of not believable, but it's true.
Yeah.
Scary stuff, man.
Yeah,
why would somebody want to change themselves?
But there's also the element of these people are bred to do that. They were the whole purpose of their being born was for them to be changed.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah,
And let's pretend they're not talented. I mean, my goodness, they spend their lives doing we all get kind of like for me, sometimes I see somebody and they're so crazy talented and I'm like, wow, what have I done with my life? But the thing was that, like you're saying, they were born for that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't something they picked up at like 22.
Right, yeah. I believe that there's a lot to that, especially with the genetics, not even, although I do believe that some artists and musicians, actors and so forth were specifically bred for their status, but there are others who it's in their bloodline, and so it makes them more capable, and so if they do get interested in music or whatever, it's part of their innate bloodline or their molecular being that helps them gain success in
like the Young Brothers and the Van Halens,
right?
Those guys. By the way, Eddie's not a man.
Is he not? I mean,
people, but
I don't follow.
The reason why people don't want to believe it is because they're heroes, right? They have these heroes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you the first. I always loved Queen, right?
Yeah.
And
I love Queen today. I mean, fuck.
Yeah, I always. I don't know. After jazz, I kind of lost my.
See, for me, the Kind of Magic, the Highlander soundtrack stuff, I absolutely.
Yeah, you like that stuff?
Oh my God, Princess of the Universe is maybe my favorite song by them.
Oh, jeez. Well, I grew up with them. My parents went to theirs. My parents saw everybody, for Christ's sake. But anyway, so these are the first sort of things that happened to me. Like, I saw these giant posters of Queen, right? And I was young, and I said to myself, well, even a young kid knows the difference between a man and a woman, right? I used to laugh at these posters because I was like, what are these people? Oh, boy. Then I never saw anything the same again.
Yeah.
Because it was obvious. So, the other thing is the Fort Henry, that's some crazy. There's one in Hull, where I'm from.
Yeah.
But they destroyed it so much that it's halfway in the water, and they never mention it.
Huh.
And I don't know why we don't know that there's a East Coast Star Fort, but I mean there might be many more, but I found one in Hull, and but it's not intact at all. So you gotta wonder, how did they?
Is it
how
something?
did they destroy that thing, or did it get flooded and they never had to worry about it?
Can you see it?
It's a really weird thing.
Can you see it from Google Earth?
You can see a piece of it if you know where to look. I haven't looked for it in a long time, but yeah, it's like I said. If you didn't know what a Earth fort looked like, you'd miss it because it
kind of blends into the landscape.
Nantasket, Hull, all up that coastline. If you look up there, you might find it. I only found it because I lived out there, so I know what area you're looking.
Yeah.
But the Fort Henry, that thing's pretty. So they're saying that's where the Star-Spangled Banner was born.
Yeah, it was written right off the shore there. Francis Scott Key was out on a boat negotiating the release of some prisoner of war or something like this, and the British bombed Fort McHenry, and come sunlight, Francis Scott Key looked out and saw that our flag was still flying from it, and wrote the poem that the fort held, and but the thing about the star forts that I think is really interesting, and I'm kind of amazed that I haven't gotten wind of any other researcher looking into this, and if they have, I haven't seen it or no one's told me about it, but seeing the connection between the American star forts and the Army Corps of Engineers, I mean, there's an Army Corps of Engineers station right next to just about every star fort in North America, and that's really interesting to me. And
since you said we're talking about that, I've always this is awesome, right? We have a railway over here in California, and it's right up the street from me, and it's in Glendale, and you'll never guess whose coat of arms is associated with our railway.
Oh my God! Don't tell me it's
that castle. Yep.
Who is it?
Castle. They have a big brass or bronze plaque of that castle at the railway.
Of which castle?
The red and white castle.
Oh, for the army. Right. Okay.
Yeah, from the auto kit. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, so first of all, we didn't build this bridge, and they have the plaque to prove it. And
Yeah.
they dug out the railway, obviously, because it's over the railway.
Right.
It doesn't say railroad, it says Army Corps.
Yeah. I mean, there's really something to that, and
yeah, I agree.
I don't know, like I said, maybe if I were Woodward or Bernstein or somebody, would be worth really digging in to see what was happening, or I should really take a closer look at that someday,
Yeah, and you know what else is even stranger than that? That emblem, the Army Corps.
Yeah.
And we're talking about massive structures, right? Massive.
Right, and this is where I think if you're looking to find, and this is what God, I haven't really thought about this since I really made those early videos, because it's always kind of like always forward. But the removal of the dirt was a huge thing, and the repositioning of it. Like, if these cities were deliberately buried, what were they, where were they getting the dirt from, and how are they moving it,
Yeah.
And they were moving it by rail.
Where did they put it on? You asked a good question about that. What are we talking about here? Where did all this stuff go?
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of have to like think these things through a little bit, try to, how does this, and that's the thing, that's how it, kind of what really got me interested in starting a channel and everything. I was kind of bored and I needed something to do, and, finding the mud flood videos and correlating it to what I was, like I said, I didn't really notice this stuff in New Haven, or in Connecticut all that much at all. And then when I moved to Baltimore, I was like, what the heck is going on with these buildings? I don't understand. Why are these windows so low here? Why is that door so high? How is that practical in 1850 when they built this freaking building? To have a doorway 15 feet off the ground, it doesn't make any sense. And, when I came across the mud flood, it was like, okay, this is interesting. How can I correlate this mud flood to the architecture that I'm seeing in this town? And how does that work? Because everything has to be practical. And this is the thing about these large, whether they're megalithic or, is that the right word? I mean, these giant, like the giant architecture that we see, these huge vaulted ceilings and arched doorways, these massive structures. How is that ever practical for man to build? I mean, mankind does things practically, if it's not practical and cost effective, they're really not going to do it,
I agree. Everything has to make sense.
Right. It's got to make sense. All right. So now if there was some pre-civilization here that was fully formed with a full energy system and its own government and things like that, and if it did have larger people in it,
we definitely did.
Yeah, and what we're left with today are these half-buried buildings. Okay, well, how does that work? How do we get from that to this? And
it's a shame the stuff that we don't know about that got taken down. Like we do have a lot of residue from that, pictures and stuff and such, and some stuff from YouTube, with the 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter film and stuff. So there's a lot of cool stuff. But imagine what's gone.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know anything.
And my favorite stuff is, to be honest, is statues.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how many of those got. And I'm talking about non-human, because we see some of it still. But why?
Well,
Who are these people? I mean, did we really have a lot of different species around here? Like a lot?
Well, definitely with I see a lot of that here as well, especially with these weird mythological creatures turn up in this architecture on the friezes and on the sides of buildings and stuff like this. there's some weird monsters hanging out on the walls in Baltimore. It's like, what the heck? And they're all like 25, 30 feet off the ground. So unless you're actually looking for them, you never see them. You know, and there's a ton of that in Baltimore.
And they're giants.
Yeah.
They're like giant compared to you and me, right? The actual statue. That's the craziest thing. Like, did these people really want to make them giants, or were they that big? You know, that's my big question.
Yeah.
Were they really that big? You know, something else that hasn't been delved into deeply at all, and I've tried a couple of times, but I can't get anywhere because I'm not saying anything bad about New Earth Channel.
No.
But she doesn't go deep enough for me to get any information or breadcrumbs to go looking. Is the Worm Knight?
Yeah, well, that's where I got it from.
By that.
I got the Worm Knight from her.
I've read some books that go nowhere. I mean, I've done some serious hardcore research. I want to know who's in the night suit. Don't you?
Right. Yes.
That's my biggest thing.
There are. I mean, the suits of armor are insane to me. I mean, you want to talk about practicality and things needing to be practical.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing. There's nothing practical about a full-on suit of armor. Chainmail is more practical. You know, it's loose fitting.
Absolutely.
You have a good range of motion. But you know, these full suits of metal armor are not practical. They don't make any sense. You could not fight effectively in them. People could just come over, push you over, and you're toast. You know,
you couldn't even ride a horse.
Right? Yeah, you couldn't.
With that on.
It's ridiculous.
You know what's funny about that? We say that, and then someone would say, "Oh, you guys are stupid. Don't you watch the Discovery Channel?"
Oh, of course.
A&E, they got knights all over riding the horses and doing jousting and all.
Yeah.
Now, I agree with that. So it's sort of a mystery. Like, if people couldn't do it, then how can we do it now?
Well, for one thing, I mean, the knights riding horses with suits of armor at medieval times while people eat their friggin' turkey legs is not the same suit of armor that they would wear in battle in the 13th and 14th centuries. You know, I mean, right? They're not wearing the same stuff. They're heavily modified with, you know, you look at these original suits of armor, there's no joint movement in them. You know, and it's funny.
Yeah.
Did you ever see any Miss Havisham videos? I talk about her. She's a good friend of mine.
Oh, Miss Havisham? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure that I have.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to. Or I'll try to remember to send you a link to a couple. But she has one where she was in a church and looking at these like sort of tombs for these very wealthy people, you know, inside these churches, and they would have like statues of them over the tomb, you know, kind of like sarcophagus, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them has a knight kneeling, and you know, you can clearly see that there was like on the knee was a circular, what was supposed to be for, you know, joint motion on the knee, right? However, they would have that built into the knight's armor so he could, you know, walk and get on a horse or do whatever. But in the statue itself, it's bent like it's made of leather and not metal. Like you can kind of like see it's folded, you know, and that it's not really metal. But perhaps, you know, some other like leather or some, you know, like cloth material or something. Very interesting.
We might be fabricating the whole. Is that what you're saying? We might be fabricating the whole.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm closer to that than I am anything else. That everything we're doing, everything any truther is looking at is 100% red herring. It all is. You know?
Yeah.
We're not supposed to know the truth. Are you kidding? That is way above our pay grade. You know, we are just supposed to be kept busy and then we're food. You know, I mean, that's kind of the way I look, you know. Or it's a complete simulation and we're, you know, some kid in some other dimension is playing us like we're a Sims game or, you know.
Yeah, that kind of worries me. I you know, because you think you're you, but then you with all this research, like the first Mandela effect that ever happened to me, and I wouldn't have called it that. I don't know how much you on the East Coast. Well, you're kind of on the East Coast too, but
oh yeah.
so from where I'm from, Ouija board was a big deal.
Yeah, sure. It was made right there in Salem, but invented here in
When
Baltimore.
I used to have a notebook full of Ouija sessions.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I never used it that much, but I definitely farted
around
around with it.
97 or something. I had this old Ouija board from my aunt, who obviously bought it in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so I had this thing. And I lived with somebody for a long time, and then I moved out of there. Now, the funny thing about this Ouija board was that it changed completely. But nobody ever touched it. It was in the original box, but when I pulled it out, now someone would say, well, someone switched it. Who switched it in my...
Right. Yeah, when did that happen?
In my cellar.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know.
Did that ex-roommate really break into your house to switch that out?
Things like that really happen.
Yeah.
You know, I find it strange that it might be a simulation, because sometimes what you think, like I'll see a movie where I thought I knew the dialogue by heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Oh yeah, there's definitely things that are like, you know, the whole. I was looking up. I wanted to use the you have some splaining to do. You know, Desi Arnaz and Lucy, right?
Yeah.
And he never said it. And I was like, how is that possible? I clearly remember that from being a kid. You know.
Wait a minute, I remember that. My parents watched that diligently.
Yeah, I mean, he never said it. You know, and so there's weird things like that out there. But Mandela effects are very weird to me, because I definitely think that those could be plants. You know, somebody, you know, puts out this was different then, and I was like, you know, and then people will start, well, yeah, it was different then, because you've triggered a synapse because it's all spellcraft. You know, so you create like a meme or something that has a jar of peanut butter that says Jif, and the person says, didn't this used to be called Jiffy? And everybody's gonna be like, yeah, it did used to be called Jiffy. You know, I mean, it's all part of, you know, they're just messing with our memories. You know, they're not like nothing has really changed. Someone is deliberately fucking with us. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
There is no memory, and like you say, it's like a sim.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking too the other day. I was watching some of your old stuff, and I was thinking, so it only takes 66 days way back when to sail from England to New England, Mass, right?
Yeah.
So how long do you think it took those people? You know, because we were taught in school that it's a big expedition, a big undertaking, and all this stuff. Well, how long do you think it took them to take a blimp over here, or a balloon? It's only 3,000 miles from England to England, Mass.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, we have this. It's the Navy who came over with all the equipment, right? And the ships. So they just decided to take that narrative and build it into the whole thing. When these guys were coming over,
oh yeah,
within 4 hours.
Right? Yeah, they had to have been. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You know, some of the, you know, the time when you try to follow a traditional timeline, it's like, did they really waste 2 months, so 4 months out of the year to go from Virginia to England, from England back to Virginia? They really waste 4 months of a year. News doesn't travel. You know, how can you relay, you know, something that happened in Boston to the court in London, you know, and bring the court's decision back to Boston? That turnaround is 4 months by boat, you know, in the 1600s.
Yeah, there's no way.
It just doesn't make any sense. You know, they had to have had a way to get back and forth expeditiously, you know, so news could travel and plans can change, and they can, you know, they had to have had a way to do that. Say again?
Right? 4-hour decisions.
Yeah.
And you know, I was thinking the sailing vessels. So we're talking about the Navy, and that's the dig out corps.
Yeah.
Right. They needed boats to bring lots of heavy equipment over. I'm sure they could have used blimps, but sailing was probably much more economical for them to bring that equipment over here, like it still is.
Yeah.
You know, but the men were coming over on the rich people, because you talk about a lot of times with these rich people living in huts and
Well, that
digging
was the
out
thing when I was
trenches and stuff. No way.
right when I first started looking at it, for real. I guess I hadn't really thought about this stuff since like high school and anything, but but once, and this is another interesting thing too about like, sort of what's happening with the research that I'm doing in like Tartaria and stuff. It's like
Which I'm not even a big fan of.
Oh,
I
no.
don't like the word Tartaria.
Yeah, me neither. And there's another word
Yeah.
that I hate, which is antiquitech. God, anytime I hear antiquitech, I want to pull out my hair and scream. It's like, no,
Yeah.
it's the
I
same tech.
understand.
It's absolutely. You're looking at metal rods on roofs, calling it antiquitech. That's an antenna. We use them today. It's the
Yeah.
same tech.
I
It
agree.
is the same
A lot
tech.
of this stuff is overblown.
Right.
And my brother and I always talk, just because they had free energy and just because they had ether, just because all that doesn't mean everything was lovely and wonderful
No.
for the have-nots.
Yeah. No.
I mean, we're talking about an industry that had to have been controlled by super smart people. I mean, because they know about it now, they just don't give it to us. Wouldn't it be the same thing? I mean, I guess I could go back to some of those, the paintings or the artwork that I do stuff about.
Absolutely, yeah.
The background.
Yeah.
Those people seem very peaceful and serene. I think there was a time when we lived with the gods and everything was nice, but that was so long ago that even
I'm not sure.
Over,
I'm not sure of that either. I definitely think we're little worm creatures who were just created about like 400 years ago.
I could go that way too. I mean, I'm not set on.
Oh no.
anything.
Believe me, yeah. There's.
I
I mean, it could be anything. No one's right. There's no one's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it was always very peaceful though. One thing I do like to look at is I recognize that there's a huge discrepancy between what we call Greek statues and what we call Phoenicians, right? The people with the bridge nose.
Yeah, the sea people.
The Romans look like, the Greeks look like men and women. The other people, they look androgynous, right? So those are two different. Like, I don't know if we could put labels on them, like, these guys are Greeks and these guys are Phoenicians or Romarians or whatever, right? I don't like those titles either because we can't be sure what we're looking at, right? What timeline, when these people lived. Who would make these statues?
Right. I mean, they just,
Are these in their own image or not?
And when were they made? I mean, that's another thing. I mean, they find a marble statue and they say this was made in 314, BC. Oh yeah, how? How do you know that?
Oh, I wanted to get back to you saying we were talking about the rich people.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Something with the Tartarians.
Yes. So the thing with like when I started digging in and I figured I was going to look at this stuff through Baltimore. I would think if there was something to the Tartarian thing, I would have gotten drawn that way somewhere. But instead, it led me more to the Tarian part, the sort of traditional narrative that we're given, and trying to kind of make what was happening work through that. And when I started to read about how these wealthy courtesans were the first people coming over here, I'm like, the Lord Baltimore didn't come over here and sleep on the ground. I mean, he had swank place
he didn't
here.
sleep with the pilgrims either.
Right. I mean, it was, these people weren't coming over here and creating wooden stick huts on the beaches while they got their colonies rolling. That's just not the way those people traveled,
And think about how many people came over in the dead of winter. What were they doing? Planting carrots? No
right.
way. And besides, we're talking about people rich enough not to plant their own vegetables anyway. I mean, let's face it, they were bringing people over here. And it's funny, you do this whole thing with the populations. There is no way that they built Star Force with those populations.
Yeah.
Crazy,
you mean like the bigger city-sized ones?
What's that?
You mean like the really large star forts that were like city-sized?
Yeah, I mean, even today, how could we do that?
Yeah.
We have to clear everyone out first. I mean, think about the logistics of that, right?
Yeah.
Even some of these schools, they say they went to these schools. Well, who built the schools before they went there?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
You know, I mean, that's the so their grandfathers built the schools that they could go to. I thought their grandfathers went. I
Right.
remember in one video you were going back and forth between these two guys, and you were like, okay, so they said the old man built it, and then they said the son built it, and they couldn't even keep it straight.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Yeah, looking into the phony architects and things like that, that's...
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to do that thing about the shadow, because we get attributed. You know how much stuff that guy's attributed to? Like
Oh,
half the artistry in the world is what?
goes to that
There's
one
no
guy.
way that he had enough time.
Yeah.
Considering he never went to school and he only started in like when he was 30.
Oh, those stories are the best. He had no education. He was just a natural. He was the natural.
He's a natural.
He designed everything. Yeah.
Yeah, do you think Mozart and people like that were really alive? I mean, do you think that stuff's old world too?
That's interesting. I mean, I don't know, because for me, it gets hard to think about, who or what could have been real, quote unquote. Looking at the historical record, when I look into the 1700s and stuff like that, to me, in terms of like families and stuff like that, my guess is, the traceable population, really only goes to like the 1820s, maybe at the furthest back, 1830s.
Yeah.
Right. Anything before that, I have a really hard time, trusting a source enough to say, yeah, that was real. I mean, Mozart could have been a plant. That music is planted the same way.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, where does this brilliance come from?
Yeah.
A machine, like, say AI has always been here. Then AI was making up all this stuff before we ever. But the thing is, I want to bring up a point. So I've been watching this stuff lately about miniature models, and miniature model making is an art that goes back.
Are you talking about like for practical effects for movies, or just to build miniature models for display?
Anything. Like, you can go and look at people's miniature, like, say, railways.
Yeah.
That they do in their basement. I mean, the stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
So imagine how long this has been around.
Oh
So
yeah.
I wonder how much of the stuff, like the nuclear bomb stuff, I always wondered, even when I was a kid on TV, like, that stuff looked like toys, right? It turns out it probably was.
Yeah. I used to have the same when I would first see footage of like the nuclear explosions, the tests from the 40s and the 50s.
How
Like,
can you
where's
not?
right? How come the camera didn't get blown apart?
Yeah.
I
I mean, that's like 11-year-old knowledge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're 11, you can figure this stuff out.
Who's
You're like,
holding
wait a
that?
minute.
Yeah.
This isn't right. But when I was in school, believe it or not, I used to have to hide under the desk.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. Oh, I remember.
About, the city hall.
I remember bomb drills.
They used to let out a wail, and boy, you had to hide.
Yeah. I remember we had to go into the hallways and duck our heads between our legs. That was our knees.
Yeah.
That was what we
had
had
to get under the desk.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Talk about instilling fear into children for no reason.
None. Yeah. Well, I mean, we say there was none, but they had very good reason, because the more afraid we are, the more likely we are to accept their, assistance. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely softened up the world. They knew exactly how soft they needed the world to be to push this, narrative as they've been pushing it.
Yeah. It's really true. Really true.
And this goes. And I think that, looking at it the way I have, and understanding, although as little as I do, because I certainly don't have an in-depth understanding of it, but some of the processes of psychological warfare and seeing it traced back through the Royal Society and how they use arts and sciences, and they've had us clocked for a long time, and that's the thing about, like, I think about, like, the hardcore, like, believers in science, right? The scientism people,
Yeah.
trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. These people, they don't understand that they're not trusting the science. I mean, you're not trusting the science. You're trusting the scientists. You're trusting the people who bring you the science.
Right. Well, I heard a guy say one time, a guy who did a lot of videos back in the day. His name was Michael Testarian.
Okay.
And he said something really profound. He said, if we didn't have TV, we probably wouldn't even think about putting clothes on.
Right.
And I agree that there's something there that's so, like the radio, the TV, the sort of just communication in general.
Yeah.
Somebody told us to do all this.
Yeah. And I saw a meme recently that was like, the eyes can only see this spectrum of visible light. The ears can only hear this spectrum of audible sound,
Right.
Those are not the only spectrums of those things. There's so much more going on around us that we cannot see or hear. That there's stuff happening all around us that we cannot see.
And things change hugely, right? Because I can tell a story about, and I don't want to get this misconstrued. If anybody ever hears one of my videos and then listens to this, I think some people were a little confused. I mentioned that in school, in my social science class, that flat Earth was in the textbook.
Yeah.
I want to point out that we didn't learn about flat Earth. It was in the textbook, so we had a discussion about it.
Right.
And of course, it didn't go much further than that, right? Because the teacher wasn't really entertaining that. He was just telling us what the textbook said.
Right, and I'm sure the textbook was something like, this is what they used to believe before we found out this.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not in there anymore. But my point about that is that it made sense once we discovered talked about that topic briefly, and then went to the ball model. I was stuck on the flat. I never, like I said, I never believed we went around the sun, because that's what that chapter was talking about. And I was like, but that makes sense. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
And of course, back then, you couldn't talk to your parents or the teacher about these things, so you just went along to get along, right? But man, I wish all my life there was someone to say, hey, how about this? But there wasn't.
Yeah. For me,
my brother was the closest person, and we used to bounce a lot of things off each other, but even that would only go so far.
Yeah.
You gonna say?
For me, like, at least in terms of, like, flat Earth, for me, it always comes down to, it doesn't match our reality. It doesn't match our experience.
Right.
We experience the sun and the moon going across the sky. We experience the stars moving in a circle above us. Nowhere can we feel the motion of the earth. Nowhere can we see the curvature, And now they say, like, in order to see the curvature, you have to be like 50,000 feet in the air. Isn't it convenient that most aircraft, have a travel height of like 25,000? So it's never going to get up that high. People say, I've seen the curvature of the earth from an airplane. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. It just.
I mean, come on. And they keep changing the height too, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think it is higher now, because I took an airplane flight this summer, and so I was like, oh man, what's our cruising altitude going to be? 25,000 feet or something like that. And how high do you have to be? Oh shit, you got to be 50,000 feet to see the curvature. Of course you do.
Keep going.
But it always comes down to that practical aspect of it. You can't bring me anywhere on this planet and show me its spin. You can't you can't bring me anywhere and show me this curvature. You can't do those things.
Right.
And in terms of like the sun and the moon, and I want to tell this story because I watched your video on the luminaries and the ego. Yeah. And in it you talk about communicating with the luminaries and what a positive thing that can be. And I was like, well, that's where I always get it wrong because I curse at the luminaries. Curse you, sun, for being so bright and hot. I curse the moon for not being bright enough to lead me when I'm out in the dark. Yeah. I get that wrong. But I remember.
I find that a lot of people think that it. I don't know. I think it's the ears to the creator.
Yeah. I mean, it could be. I don't know what to make of the sun and the moon, really. And I do remember this is also something that I always knew there was something wrong with our reality. I remember the grade and my teacher, but I don't quite remember his answer, unfortunately. But I'm sure it was just a carbon cutout answer from a science book. But I really was curious. Going into school there, I saw Day Moon. I was in the 6th grade. I'd seen them before everything, but we were kind of talking about the moon and the sun and stuff in our science class. And so I asked him, and I said, can you explain how is it that if the phase of the moon is the shadow of the Earth, how can we see a day moon? And if there's a day moon, shouldn't we see the whole rock? Because the Earth isn't there to block it and make the shadow. And I don't know. He gave me some cookie cutter answer that just didn't satisfy me when I was in the 6th grade. And,
how could it?
Yeah, and I always kept that memory with me. Just I love day moons. Anytime I have thousands of pictures of day moons in my phone. Anytime I see one, I take a picture of it. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
We're right there. I've been, and sometimes, again, like I said in the video, they're literally a mile apart sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's the sun. There's the moon. I'm on the Earth. How does this work?
No. And you know what I said? I brought some people outside my job one time, right? And we had one of these scenarios where the sun and the moon were right together, right?
Yeah.
So I said to them, hey, what do you guys think that Australia sees right now if we got both here?
Yeah. What's happening down there?
No one. I don't even think those guys know where Australia is.
Well, I mean, depending on the time. Australia's crazy because it's tomorrow there, right?
Yeah.
So, that's is it nighttime tomorrow there? Is it I don't know. My father once told me that he had heard that the Kennedy assassination was in the papers in Australia, New Zealand, and stuff before it actually happened. Like when they woke up that morning in Australia and New Zealand stuff, they had, the news story was that President Kennedy had been killed, but he actually hadn't been killed yet because it's tomorrow there.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know how true that is, but I remember my old man telling me that story. Yeah.
It's possible, right?
Yeah.
Which brings me to something. Uruguay, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but they have a statue of Kennedy, and they also have colonials over there. Like, I can't believe how many colonial statues there are. I didn't know. Nobody taught me that the colonial dress was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm confused by that. And I thought that was like a new thing, like a pilgrim thing, if you know what I'm saying. And maybe I'm dumb, but when I started seeing statues of these guys in places that I didn't know that they discovered or lived, it's just really weird.
Yeah, I don't know enough
about
about.
Mandela effect too. I guess I don't like that word, but
Which word?
it's something that got really weird for me. And I was gonna make a whole video on it, but it got so weird that I just kind of dropped it because there was too much. Sometimes I don't make videos because the information is hard for me to convey. It gets so mixed up.
Yeah. Oh, believe me,
I
don't know. I haven't really abandoned many videos or decided not to cover a topic. It's happened a couple times, but so I'm kind of curious as to what it would be that would stop you from making a video about it.
It just really I think I just get frustrated because I'm like, okay, this paragraph is almost exactly the opposite of that. How am I supposed to tell somebody that these people came over here and then they didn't, but they have a statue, but somebody else says that somebody else came, and how does this all make sense?
Right.
Like, how do I make sense to the viewer that I'm trying to convey something that I don't?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, and believe me, I have those moments too. I just kind of, you know, for lack of a better metaphor, I just kind of bowl my way through it and hope it makes sense. You know. I was having that kind of issue.
I don't know if you noticed, but I don't do much off the cuff. I'm not good at that. You do it, and that's fine, but I can't. Like, I would stop in the middle of the video if I came to something like that and be like, okay, you guys, I'm done.
Yeah. I've changed my, I mean, I do, some of my stuff is off the cuff, but I, you know, for the most part now, I plot them out. And I give myself an outline. And, you know, like the more slideshowy ones. I mean, what happened, sort of happened is my vision is degenerative, right? So it's continually getting worse. And I was having and I still continue, even with the slideshow ones that I do, you know, I have a hard time like finding my place, especially on a busy page. You know, where was I? You know, where was that information? You know, because I only see such a tiny part of the screen at any given time. So I felt,
for you to script it out.
Yeah, so I was like, you know, it's just time now for me to start scripting these things out, because what was happening was I would do it like, and I still do it this way, really. It's I do one take. You know, it's like a show. You know, it's a performance of whatever script or slideshow I've worked up, and you know, Baltimore Fats is definitely a character. You know, I am. You know, Baltimore Fats is all me, but I'm not all Baltimore Fats. You know.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I don't do stuff like that's what I'm saying. Like, I guess a little back to not a couple of videos that I just abandoned was because, you know, I will script it out, and if it stops making sense to me to convey, I'm like looking at it with words, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say this. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I don't know how to write this and then convey it. I guess that's the best I can do.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, way off topic.
Sure.
What do you think about Charles Manson?
Charles Manson? You know, I don't really think about him all that much. It's funny, you know, do you know Tom Carberry? Do you know who he is?
I'm not sure.
He's another content creator. He's a friend of mine as well, and I've definitely done a Mudletting episode with him, and he has a theory that, you know, Charles Manson and these types of serial, they never existed. You know, that Charles Manson wasn't real. That was a full-on staged and scripted character for people. You know, and the same with Ted Bundy and some of these others. You know.
Oh yeah. That's what I think too. I think he was played by a bunch of guys, and I even know somebody who told me, "Oh, one of those jail interviews is George Bush."
Really?
Junior. And I'm like, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they were laughing behind closed doors at that.
That Bush was the interviewer, or he was the guy playing Charles Manson?
He was the guy playing him. Yeah.
What? I'll have to find. I'm gonna have to go back and look at old prison interviews with Charles Manson now.
And the thing about that is, I almost believe it because they do this doppelganger thing. You know,
well, that's something I wanted to talk to you about too, because it's curious to me. I mean, you talk about in your show, you always say like the entities. You know, so are you like this is like they're like shape shifting type beings, or how are you viewing them?
The entities are anything that can present itself as something that it's not. And I would go so far as to say that I went out with a girl who was an entity.
Oh yeah?
Because she could present herself. I mean, this person was a doppelganger of herself. Yeah. So I know that these people exist. I lived with her.
Well,
She could change into anything at any moment. And I know that sounds weird, but I can't even explain it to you. So there are entities, and it's the same type of thing as like a Freddie Mercury or a girlfriend that you might know or a George Bush Jr.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there's the possibility of. Well, I definitely think there.
Because I don't think the entities are just the Hollywood elite.
No.
The human has changed. Look, when I was a kid, women looked a certain way and guys looked a certain way, but now, and I know the grandfathers would be like, "You guys look like girls." Yeah, we had long hair, but we didn't look like girls.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We're built the same way.
The entity is anybody who can, like, I've known some of these people, so I can't. Jay Leno is an entity. I mean, that guy is the weirdest.
Who?
I live right around here. Jay Leno?
Oh, Jay Leno? Oh, it's funny because, all right, so I couldn't find the video that you used, but I did find another one, and I watched it. And as I said in the comment, I worked with, like, a nephew of his who was really, really weird. Yeah. He would be. Yeah, he was a really weird kid.
Speaking about alchemical, as I was growing up, I'm really into cars, and I've, done the whole changing engines and transmissions, built cars, done all that stuff, right? So I'm really into mechanics, and I've worked in mechanics my whole life. Another Mandela effect, which again I don't like the word, but we always knew that if you were racing and you put a rod through an engine, it was gone.
Right.
Or if you crack the block, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
Jay Leno's over here restoring blocks with holes in them. Now, you're not going to tell me that he's doing that because they ain't dealing with magic in his shop. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
That machine that he's using in his shop is working those lifts, putting those lights up. That place is a dream machine shop for someone like me, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing it with alchemy and steam. Oh, that's beautiful. I wish I could get close to that stuff because, like I said, he's doing stuff that I've grown up in my life knowing is impossible.
Right.
And it's not impossible to Jay. Like, whoa. And like I say, I kind of know him. I see him a lot. He has giant cars. He has steam cars.
Yeah.
He literally has a jet car that he drives around. Well, we know it's not jet, right? It's whatever they're using in those jet engines.
Right, compressed air.
We don't know what those really are. Yeah. But yeah, he's got some tech. He's one of them. He's an entity.
Well, I mean, he definitely got paid like one.
What? Oh, he doesn't deal with money, dude.
No, I'm sure he doesn't personally, but I mean, when he was well compensated for his Tonight Show and what he did for the late night stuff. So I mean, he definitely.
Well, one of the things I think he's used at, like, he's a comedian, right? So he gets to pull a laugh on us with all this technology, in my opinion. He gets to drive around with all this technology that we don't get to know about. That the Marvel people. Do you know what the Marvel people is?
Well, I was there. I mean, when you say it, I think you just mean people who believe that we live on a blue marble. But
yeah, there you go. Yeah, because a lot of people ask me, "Where are the Marvel people?" Well, it's kind of obvious, maybe, but maybe not.
No, I'm not talking about statues walking around.
No. A lot of people think that I'm talking about bloodlines and stuff. No. I'm talking about
just
the
globally.
mentality.
Yeah.
The Marvel people.
Yeah.
So let's
Gen Pop is the way I call them.
As far as the Manson thing goes, the reason why I think that is because, a long time ago, there was a place called Lookout Mountain, and it was right here. And do you know about this?
It sounds a little bit familiar. Keep going.
Lookout Mountain is a place in Laurel Canyon, right near where I live.
That's why it sounds familiar. That's where the rock revolution of America came out of, Laurel Canyon.
There you go. Yeah. Frank Zappa, Alice Cooper, Jim Morrison, Stephen Stills.
The Byrds. Yeah.
Yeah. When I found out that Stephen Stills knew Peter Tork, I was like, oh, wait a minute. You know who Peter Talk is, of course.
From the Monkees, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and Alice Cooper hung out with I mean, for crying out loud, you got Frank Zappa owning the whole the whole hippie thing, right?
And well, the thing about Zappa's from Baltimore.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I don't know how he gets to Laurel Canyon, but he's a native of what's Anne Arundel County in this town called Glen Burnie, which is just the next town over from Baltimore City.
Just think about it like that. How does Freddie Mercury come from Hungary to LA? I mean, these people. Alice Cooper's the same thing. Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
Lou Reed. What is what?
Well, that was Gene Simmons, Lou Reed, Kiss. That's New York.
Lindsey Buckingham of all names. Yeah. How did he end up? It's CIA Navy stuff, right? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, think about Jim Morrison's father was an admiral for the Navy, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, that's what I mean. When I found out Jim Morrison and what's his name? And Manson were writing songs together. Now you're like, okay, hold on.
I didn't know Morrison wrote with Manson. I thought it was the Beach Boys guy.
Murders, he would have been a big rock star, a very influential, Yeah. And the guy is only like 4'8". He might be a female anyway. But the thing about it is those killings were fake. If you go look at the pictures, you can tell right away. It's not a massively disgusting scene like everyone. It's like it's reported. It's actually a joke.
Were you talking about the Sharon Tate house?
Yeah. It's a joke. It's a joke. I mean, you can clearly see. We have false flags, right?
Yeah.
And they've always been doing that. In my opinion, the '60s rock thing was a false flag.
I mean, a lot of it. Well, I don't know if I would call it false flag. It was definitely. For me, it was just an instrument of social change, but in a way that was engineered. There was nothing organic about the rock scene of the 60s and that freedom hippie movement and things like that. There's nothing organic about that. It was all deliberately done and planted. Abby Hoffman and, Owsley with his acid and the Ken Casey and so forth with the electric Kool-Aid acid test and, the merry hipsters or whatever they were called, pranksters. That was all deliberately rolled. That was all deliberately rolled out, and not done for our benefit,
And if you ask me, they did it again for the '90s rock scene. They rebadged and renamed everything, right? And sold it to a different crowd and got everyone to get into suicide and drug use all over again.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it. People would say, "Oh, it's a new thing." I would tell people even back then, I'd be like, "I don't understand what you're talking about. Why are you using the word grunge? It's the same chord cadences that I grew up with, from Zeppelin to Black Sabbath to Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop and all this stuff, Frank Zappa and Ted Nugent." And they get mad at me, be like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." I do know what I'm talking about. It's the same.
Right.
I didn't understand the rebag.
Yeah, I mean, they just.
But now I understand it.
And unfortunately, what they did, I mean, they really killed rock. I mean, it's not a viable form of music entertainment anymore. Only on a small scale. There are no new superstar bands. The last band that I can even think of is Foo Fighters, that has any sort of super mega star, rock star kind of thing, right?
He's another entity.
Of course, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, he's definitely well connected. One of my favorite performers.
He looks like this is one of these weird situations, but he definitely looks like he's had 2 or 3 kids.
Yeah.
He's got that old lady had kids look. I mean, it's so distinct. I mean, if you've been around as long as I have, you know a bunch of old ladies who had kids, right?
Yeah.
his hair.
I haven't seen him in a while. I'll have to take a look.
Well, I looked at. Oh, and another thing, his wife's never been fat.
There's no pictures of her being pregnant or anything like that. Is that what you're saying?
She doesn't. Yeah, she has no. She's never been over 130 pounds.
Yeah, I don't even know who his wife is or anything like that. Yeah.
I only know because these entities, they always, the men always change so drastically, and I always wondered why, what happened to them. Like Brian May is like, he's Aunt Marsha, for Christ's sake. he's not and I don't think these people are transitioning either. I think they're androgynous. Yeah. I don't think they ever were a gender.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh no, absolutely. There's ample evidence of it. Certainly in the rock realm,
Yeah. Right.
And they didn't really even hide it all that much. Or rock music and the spectacle of rock music and that kind of thing was very easy.
They were putting makeup on men. Yeah. How can you say they were hiding it, right? They weren't.
No, they weren't hiding it. Yeah, and you look at some of the, and that's the thing too, because I'm of the age, and I don't know what your exact age would be, but I'm 50, right? And so
I'm over 50.
Yeah, and so, like when bands like Motley Crue and stuff like that were coming out with, I totally love those bands,
Yeah.
But you don't see, you don't get the subtext of all the makeup and the stuff like that. Why were they doing that?
And the fake drinking.
Yeah, Oh my God, Michael Anthony! I remember watching.
These bands killed me because they got me to do things that my personality wasn't even like. I would love to tell people that I've been real all my life, but I've been influenced heavily by their fakeness.
Yeah. I still am to this day, but I try to be aware of it.
Let me put this in perspective. So when you're a kid, you believe a lot of things about what you're told, right? About these celebrities. But now I go back and look at a lot of these interviews that they had. That take Motley Crue for instance. They were supposed to be bad boys, right? And they fought in the streets and they drank too much and they did all these things, right?
Yeah.
So we're supposed to believe that these guys are crazy mad dogs, right? And they'll defend their whatever, they'll defend their party going, right? And
their lifestyle and their music.
Yeah, and then you see them on a talk show where the guy says, literally, this is what happened. I had to laugh out loud. The guy says, "Well, guys, your music is devil worship." And then Nikki Sixx, the one who's supposed to be the baddest of all, right? He's looking at the ground. His body language is all sunken in, and he says to the guy, well, come on, man. It's shout at the devil, not with the devil. I was like, wait a minute. If this guy's such a badass, wouldn't he have got up and said, hey, fuck you, man. You don't know what you're talking about. We're not this. No, he acted like a 13-year-old girl.
Huh. Is that clip? Is that clip out there? I would love to see that.
Oh yeah, it's out there. So when MTV came out, I started seeing these guys as supposed to be like these badass dudes, and I saw these interviews where I was like, Alice Cooper's another one. Every time he was on a talk show, the guy shoulders were sunk in, he was sitting like a female, and I was like, wait a minute, I like this guy. Why is he acting like my girlfriend? Who's sad that her cat died? That shit bothered me, man. Yeah. These guys are supposed to be, and the same thing they did with the rap stuff. Eazy-E, definitely a female. Tupac, definitely a female. I remember back in the day when all these guys loved these 90s groups, right? Yeah. These 90s rap dudes. I always used to look at the covers and go, man, those dudes better not try to come into our neighborhood because we'll kick their ass. They're not tough. Right. They're like soft. And then it turns out, right, all these years later, that we find out that androgynous beings and entities and stuff, right? So, it's one of those things, like, I don't like to pat myself on the back or, like, give myself too much credence, but I always knew, I just never didn't know that we were spun. My brother and I both. I wouldn't say it's just me. And I'm lucky I had him because it all started with flying saucers.
Yeah.
I was reading books about flying saucers in the 4th grade.
Yeah. Oh, I was younger than that. I mean, I remember for
So,
me,
I mean,
In
and I
Search
even
of.
had
You must remember In
dyslexia and I
Search of.
didn't care. I was like, I'm reading this, and my mom asked me, what do you want with this giant Project Blue book? What can we get out of it? I'm like, oh, it talks about the government.
Right.
That's all I care about.
For me, it all started with In Search of, and they had UFOs, but they had Bigfoot and Loch Ness monster, cryptozoology.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, do you have 3 stories that you can tell about the moment you realized you didn't live where you thought you lived?
Well, I already told one, which was the Day Moon story.
Yep.
That was definitely one. I actually talked to. Let's see. I mean, if we want to go back, we would
Yeah, I
have
do.
to, like I said, I mean, the beginning would be very small, like 6, 7 years old, watching In Search of, and seeing those things on Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster. Really, I mean, when I got to Scotland, I made sure I went to Loch Ness and I was like, as we were out, we were out on the water. I bit off a thumbnail and I spit it into Loch Ness. So there'll always be a part of me in Loch Ness somewhere. That thumbnail.
Nice.
But my old man, he was very influential in this because he was a huge science fiction guy, and he was involved with like the science fiction convention scene in the 1970s, right before it was like it is today with the Comic-Cons and things like that. These were very small writer and publisher based conventions that he was involved with in the 70s, and he kept copying, like there was, but he was also like a degenerate hoarder type, and so, like anytime he came across a copy of Chariots of the Gods, he bought it. Right? And there must have been a dozen copies of Chariots of the Gods around my house,
Yeah.
So from that early on, I really
We all have that book.
Yeah, right. So there was always kind of like this state of awakening, and I always kind of knew that the government was, my father would grumble about Kennedy and and Oswald, and then when Reagan got shot, there would be, he would grumble, although he wasn't super political and getting too deep into the conspiracy theories, but he, definitely felt that, shit wasn't right. And,
Reagan shooting was a joke.
The Reagan one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a joke. I watched that live, actually.
I remember when it happened. I was in school, but I don't remember. It certainly wasn't on television, but they brought televisions in and showed us that day. We got the reruns or whatever. I remember I was living in Memphis, Tennessee. And that was like the 4th.
You were living in Memphis?
Yeah, for a brief period in my youth, I moved around quite a bit for family reasons, and so I lived in Memphis, Arizona for a brief period. I lived in Prescott, Arizona for a brief period. And when in 77, or actually before all that, in 77, I lived in Delaware. I can't remember the name of the town now, but it's where DuPont is, because my father worked for DuPont.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I did.
He probably knew some stuff.
My old man? Yeah. Well, he was. I don't know if he did. He didn't keep it with him.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So, but yeah. So there was.
Yeah,
so I did live in Memphis.
My father was a Nam, right?
Yeah.
And he told me a crazy story. They were supposed to get provisions for the war, to fight the war, right? So they dropped these provisions, and all there was booze, drugs, cigarettes in the crate.
Everything a good soldier needs.
Yeah. It's like, you guys are going to be here for a while, just relax.
Yeah.
And, it's like, we always talk about these, on video people, we always talk about these wars. Now, let's not be foolish and not believe that anybody died. I'm sure they did, but I don't know. Some of this stuff is so. When he tells you something like that, it's kind of like, okay, so they didn't send you anything to fight a war.
Right. You didn't bring medical supplies and munitions with you. You brought cigarettes and Jim Beam.
Yeah. And, spam and shit, right? funny, and it's just little clues like that I like. I remember when I was excited, I got my first cell phone in the 90s, and my old man saw it, and he was like, that's nothing new.
Right.
They were running around in the woods with them.
Yeah.
In the war.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good Lord.
Do you know that?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I don't know how small they were. They were big, as far as I remember, at least the narrative that I'm familiar with. I mean, they were big, bulky things that they had to be carried. But yeah, I mean, they were definitely portable phone technology.
I mean, this stuff has been around for, like he told me that building's been there forever. He meant it.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think? I mean, allegedly Nixon talked to somebody on the moon. How did they get service on the moon? How did that happen?
I'm actually doing a video with that interview in it. I can't wait to finish it.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely crazy.
Oh yeah, that's one of the stories about not believing, the narrative.
Yeah.
My grandmother told me when I was really little. The moon, some moon mission was on. And I said something to her. I was all but, 6 years old, or maybe 5. And I was like, Nana, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, she just told me that's a bunch of nonsense.
God bless her.
And I was like, what? And she wouldn't have any more discussion about it. It wasn't like I could say, well, what do you mean? I was probably too young to even bother, but she wouldn't even discuss it. Because I think in her mind, I'm just speculating, but in her mind, she never heard about this crap.
Yeah. Well, that's
this is space. What are you talking about?
And that's the thing about like science fiction, and this is the thing. Like my father, who was he was a huge science fiction guy from his early teens, and like I said, very involved in the 70s and stuff. And he knew people, and but he believed, we were going to the moon. He believed in the Voyager thing and black holes and all of this stuff, right? He really kind of believed in that science, right? But for me, what science fiction does and what the movies and commercials and everything else, it just reinforces that idea in us. It doesn't prove that stuff, but it softens the brain, and so that way, you don't question the idea of outer space because it's been so ingrained in you in all of your popular culture that you never question the science of it. You continue to buy into their story. But the problem that I have, and this is the thing about being like this alternative history kind of researcher or whatever, is the question that always gets me, because I don't have an answer to it in almost any regard, is why? Why are they doing this? What is the end? What is the end game? What are they shooting for here? Why is this happening? Why do they need to fill space?
I was going to ask you the same exact question. Last night I was writing some stuff down to say, I don't want to have a boring conversation with you, right?
That's never going to happen.
I was going to ask you, if these people, because I was watching one of your old videos and it brought it up to me, if these people already had it all, right?
Yeah.
And had all the land and all the buildings and all the tech, what the fuck did they need us for? We weren't here.
Yeah.
So why bring us in and then, try to get rid of us? Is that the game? Is it just, why let it go this far?
Yeah. What's the point?
I agree with you 100%. What is the, like I said, I guess I could say it again, these guys come over here on a balloon, they see America, they dig it out. For what?
Yeah. If that's even the way it happened. Again, to me, it's like, and this is what it was interesting, like about the Tartaria thing. Like I was saying, when I first got into it, like I said, my very first real video where I attempted to tell the story, with Fort McHenry, coming across the Army Corps of Engineers and having it steer me in that direction. It just really kind of, when Tartaria kind of exploded, it just got, Jesus, that's really like, Tartaria is this giant red herring to keep people from looking at the real history of why their cities are buried, and comparing the story to, the narrative that we've been taught. I mean, Tartaria and everything else that way, it's a brand new narrative. It's a shiny new thing, for people to chase, especially those who are already invested in like a flat earth theory or ancient aliens or, alternative realities, dimensions, whatever, if you're into the David Icke, and the lizard people, coming from other dimensions, I mean, if there are people, you're gearing their attention away from, if the idea of the mud flood really did spark something that we weren't supposed to know about, how do they control that? Right. We don't want people looking at the real history of their cities, so we need to give them Tartaria.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we have a lot of I don't want to say anything. I'm certainly not trying to say anything negative about any of the. I enjoy everybody's research. I mean,
absolutely. And
everybody has. I wonder about some of these people, and I'm sure you can guess their names, that get so much information. It seems like what's going on? Certain narratives that they never give up on. It's like they have no other side, and it's
right.
And I'll be honest with you, I used to try to watch Martin, but
he's a guy who lost the plot for me almost as soon as I started watching him, which would be like 3 or 4 years ago now. I mean, the thing about those channels, and this is what I found, like I said, when Conspiracy R Us dropped me, or not dropped me, but when Conspiracy R Us dropped the video that he shared of my research, because I was starting to get curious, it's like, where is this audience? Why are these channels blowing up? But mine isn't.
I remember that video.
Yeah, but mine isn't, which is fine, because like I said, I get that, I have a smaller appeal, but for me, it's like, if the audience is that big, there should be more truly curious people like myself who go looking for more. And so what kind of runoff was I getting from Conspiracy R Us? And I saw that he dropped a video where he shared my work, and then that made me kind of pay attention to some of these other channels. Well, what's going on with these other channels? And and so I got it. I was paying attention to Martin and Philip Drushinin, and there was a Richard Lopez at the time, who's now, I think, just completely off the scene.
He's gone, right?
Yeah, I think he's completely off the scene. So I was going into their chats, and I was questioning, well, why are you saying this out of this book? What is it that makes you trust this book? And how did you come to this, and they were, you get shadow ban in a chat room, but they just weren't answering my questions, and no one in the chat groups were addressing me as I was trying to ask these questions.
Right.
And then I started looking at like the individual videos and their versus their view rates versus their sub rates, and I kind of got turned on to this by this other channel who's no longer there, Never Nigis. And so when I actually wrote them an email because I felt something wasn't right, but I really didn't know what it was. I just knew that something wasn't right. Where were these numbers coming from? Why were some videos blowing up to 100,000 views and others were at 1,100 views?
And specifically anything with the word Tartaria,
right?
People who weren't even doing that kind of research were blowing up.
Right.
What was that?
Right. How is this happening? And and how would the number of videos that were getting churned out? So it's a factory. There's a Tartaria factory out there, and I'm not going to talk about the individual channels who are part of it or anything like that, or that I think would be a part of it. But they use the term themselves, like think tank. They're all working together on this thing. And
I agree.
There's
like 4 channels who have a click.
Yeah.
And you don't get in there. Even like you said, like even the chats and stuff, it's very interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you throw a curveball question at any of these guys in a chat, they're really not so keen to answer.
Dude, that's why I started making videos, because nobody would answer me about stuff.
Yeah, that's
No,
what.
not you.
Right. No.
Not you. I never had a problem with you. But
Shoot. I
you
mean,
know,
ask
even
me anything.
I
I'm happy.
wanted to like Levy a lot, but I never. He never. He
He would.
doesn't address anybody in his comments. I find that strange.
Yeah.
I don't really. I mean, but listen,
Well, for
I'm
somebody
not
like.
going just on say the Mudflood or anything like
Yeah.
music channels, model building, mechanic ones. If I like their stuff and sub them, and then I start trying to communicate with them because I want to know stuff, and they don't get back to me or they don't comment in their comments, I give them up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing. I get.
I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have to say, I mean, there is something to be said for like some of these channels, and again, I don't know how these comments are generated. I have some ideas that not all of them would be organic.
Yeah.
But you know, some channels get inundated with responses, so it's just easier to not respond to anyone. So that way, you know, you're kind of giving equal treatment to everyone. You know, you're not favoring. You know, so I do see the benefit there, but I think if you've gotten to that level, just turn your comments off. You know, why does if John Levi isn't answering anybody in his comments, why have comments? You've got the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got what, I don't know what his sub rate, 200,000 subs or something by now.
Oh, he does good. He does good.
Right. You know, I mean, so it's he doesn't need the comment section anymore, I would think, you know.
No,
I know
I
that
agree.
I think Conspiracy
That's
RS
a
has
good point.
dropped
I
comments.
never really and you talked out like even your best video is like 300 or something, and I don't even expect to get that much, to be honest.
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons why, you know, I really was kind of keen to do this interview after you told me that you were making videos, because again, I try to check like whenever because not everybody who subscribes I get a notification for. You know, people are hidden. You know, they don't want the people to know who they're subscribed to and stuff like that. So, but anytime I actually get a notification for a subscriber, I check them out. Does this person put out content? You know, or at least I try. You know. And,
yeah, me too.
And so when you said you were making videos, I was like, God damn, did I miss another one? Because it does happen. You know, but I really do go out of my way to try to make an effort to see if they make content, I'm subbing back.
Right.
And
yeah, me too. I try to keep it. Well, my videos are very new, and like I said, you basically out of all the people I've watched, you Conspiracy Russ, and there's probably a couple more, but really inspired me to do it, and it took me a long time because, like I said, I can't get. Okay, so the job that I just got through with, I said something to somebody that was a little not mainstream, right?
yeah.
So as soon as I said that, I said it in our text, right? Some people are really good in finding you.
Yeah.
Regardless of what, like they're great detectives online, right? And that's the thing with this kind of material. Like, there are certain people, like, you wouldn't really want them to tell everybody to go to your videos.
Right, yeah.
And then they're going to be like, oh, you think I'm a liar? You know? And it's not even related to them in a sense, but, you know, we go to space. No, we don't. Yes, we do. No, we don't. Yes, we do. And then they see a video of you pontificating about this stuff, and they'll be like, oh, this guy's, you know, he's an asshole.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Right. Yeah. And some people are really good at finding that stuff. Like, I don't have a Facebook. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have the only thing I have is some mystery YouTube, because that's the way it's got to be, you know?
Yeah.
Look, I'd love to tell everybody, right? In my daily life, I talk about these things, but I don't tell people I have a video channel or anything. If people come across it, they come across it, but I'm not really, like
in your personal life, yeah. I mean, the beauty thing about my personality and certainly having these things, like, it goes back with me, you know, like the minute you meet me, you know, depending on what I'm on, you know, not like drug wise, but I mean like whatever idea I'm after or you know, chasing, you know, it's coming out of me, right away, whether it's UFOs, Atlantis, cryptozoology, it always came out of me. I never hid that stuff from anybody, going back from when I was young all the way through adulthood, any job that I may have had. And thankfully, the jobs I did have, people were very cool, and I also had to be smart about it. Yeah. Say again?
But for me, it used to be like that for me, and I learned a hard lesson to just shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
definitely.
It did happen to me.
Definitely had to use discretion.
I have a couple of stories that I'm not going to go into because if I tell them, then someone will know who I am.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh, you know what? That was the wrong place to be that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to hide my personality at all. That's I'm very like that. But it's kind of like one of those things where if you, I forget what the exact thing is. Let everyone think you're stupid, and if you open your mouth, everyone will know you're stupid. Whatever, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like, oh, people can think you're a conspiracy theorist, but if they know it, it's going to be different.
Right. Yeah.
And so that setting isn't the greatest for every time in your life, right?
Oh no! Like I used to work in sales, so I knew I couldn't talk about that to people I was selling stuff to.
Obviously, right?
Yeah, but my coworkers and stuff, they could know how crazy I was.
Certainly, certain stuff. Me and this guy at the old job that I was talking about, where we have to sign off our life to do these jobs. We joke about the trannies all the time.
Yeah.
But only me and him.
Right.
He didn't tell anybody else that we were joking about it because we get fired.
Yeah.
We weren't even supposed to talk about this stuff. It was but we'd always have a blast in our own little corner. But other than that, and I told him, I said, don't you know most of the stars are like that? And once I told him that, man, he never got back. He's like, dude, I can't even watch TV anymore. I know.
Thankfully, I can. I have a really powerful suspension of disbelief, so I can still enjoy things. Although now I'm so aware of things that I just see them. I'm like, yeah, that's the programming right there. I see another programming thing right there. Yeah. But I can still separate myself enough to get some enjoyment out of it.
That's good. I'm glad you can, because I gave up my TV about 20 years ago, and then my brother and I both did a long stint in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And so I found out a lot of things, and
now are you related to the Malagem, the small fry?
I know about her channel, but I'm not related to her.
I was curious because, I mean, and this won't make the cut. I'm already looking at the time here. We've been going almost 2 hours, and I'm going to have to try to find a way to edit this down to a reasonable amount of time. But I noticed that she was really, she comments on a lot of your videos, you comment on, so I didn't know if, I was kind of putting together, because I was confused also with your brother, Virtual SG. Right? I thought he, because I had seen his Star Wars videos before I knew that you were making videos.
Yeah, that's not me.
Right, and so that's not you, but when I first came across your channel, I was like, oh, I think this is the same guy, just doing two different styles of video, right? Because you have very similar, of course, coming from Brockton, Mass, you're going to have the same accent, and so, I wasn't doing, visual comparisons, it just sounded like the same guy to me, And so your brother commented on a video, and I commented back about one of your videos, and he was like, I don't understand the reference. I'm like, oh, wait, you're not the same guy?
No.
So I thought maybe she might be a part of, maybe your sister or something. I don't know.
No, she's not my sister. But she, I know what she knows, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I got in there and I got out. Because...
And I think,
obviously the stuff that people don't even really want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, you're good. No, I was just going to say, because she commented, I don't know, she must have found me through watching your videos. Yeah, and so she...
Maybe. I tell everyone about you.
I know. I've watched your videos now, and I really appreciate that. It's amazing.
Dude, I even did an impression of you. Did you see that?
No, where?
In the Barry Frank.
I'll have to watch that one back. I kind of like blitzkrieged most of your episodes last week because it was the first week of school and I kind of had an empty house.
Yeah. That's nice. Yeah. Benny Frank. I forget what the name of it is. It's about Benny.
Ben Franklin. I know that I just have to go back and see about there was one where you used the clip from the maypole. I thought was great, comparing it to the Tesla coil.
Once I saw that, I was like, there it is.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. I was like, wow, sometimes I am onto something.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm not a passive. I'm not a passive viewer of the stuff that I'm. Obviously, you can probably tell. I mean, I'm so not passive that there's a difference between flying saucers and UFOs, and we've been going 2 hours, so I won't get into that. But there's a distinct difference, and both things are sort of connected as far as the powers that be in a different way to communicate with the Marvel people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Both things have their own little spell cast that are different. It's very interesting, but we don't. We can have more.
Definitely have more conversations because I'm actually thinking that it might be time to wrap this one up here at 5 o'clock. And
let's talk again.
Sounds good, man. All right, so I'm gonna get I can't tonight, but I'm gonna get cracking on this tomorrow, and I'll let you know how it comes out, man. It was great talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again.
Me too, and maybe we can get Mellow Jim and Skull and my brother on here sometime.
Well, I would be happy to do a group thing, like a Zoom or something,
Yeah, that would be awesome. We should.
Let's do it.
All right, definitely.
All right, have a good day, man. Thanks a lot.
Yep, you too.